So the special vehicle work commissions is really the most underrated business in GTA Online now, even before this update, but now it is very underrated because they now have the high demand bonus in public sessions when you sell these vehicles. So before, the top range vehicles would give you 100,000, but now it gives you 150,000, which really adds up doing this method. But I still think this is one of the best businesses ever added into the game, but also very underrated, very forgotten about after all of these other updates we've gotten for the past 5 years now. So this is going to be an updated guide on everything you need to know about it and why it is the most underrated business. So let's get started with buying a CEO office. The first thing you have to do, which probably most players already have, but this is necessary to do this. So setting up a CEO office is pretty easy, and you most likely have already gotten the CEO office years ago. So that means you can move forward with the next step. But if you don't, you will need a CEO office that you can choose from any location, even the cheapest option, even like the Maze Bank West for $1 million, or you could use the most expensive location, which is the Maze Bank Tower, which I have. Now, once you do that, you could now register as a CEO and access the laptop inside of your office. Now, there are a lot of other businesses where you do have to be a CEO, but this is just for this one. So buying a CEO office will be worth it, even for other businesses, not just this one. So now we move on to buying the vehicle warehouse location. And what is the best location? So after you get your CEO office, you have to now buy a special vehicle warehouse. These are all exactly the same. They all hold up to 40 vehicles, but you don't want to fill it up all the way. You won't be using all 40 slots, which is what this video is about, because there's a secret way to get only top tier vehicles only. So the cheapest warehouse is La Mesa Vehicle Warehouse, which is only $1.5 million. So if you go with all the cheapest options, you could get started with this business for only $2.5 million, which is honestly not that bad. The most expensive one is a Merida Heights Vehicle Warehouse, which is $2.8 million, which I would not go that high, even because both of these, the most expensive and the cheapest, are so close to each other, just down the street of each other. So I would go with the cheapest just because it's the cheapest, and most expensive one already is right across the street from the cheapest. But if you don't want to be by many other players in public sessions, because you will, that is the main part of this video, is public sessions. So if you don't want to be by a lot of other people who are doing this now because it has been buffed up, you can choose something in the middle. Something where most people probably do not have because they either chose the most expensive one like me or the cheapest one. Well, I chose the one at the airport, which is good because not a lot of people go down there, and it is right on the main road that goes from the bottom of the city all the way to the top. So that is a very good location, which not a lot of people have. So that makes delivering these vehicles a lot easier if you are going by ground. So those are the basics. Now, how to get top range only, what this video is about. So let's get into the most important part. Only getting top range. So there are 3 tiers of vehicles: standard tier, mid, and top range vehicles. Standard range sells for 50,000, and after the setup fees, that's only about 30,000. Mid range sells for 70,000, and after the fees, it's about 50,000. And the top range, the ones you want to get, will sell for 100,000, and after the fees, that's 80,000. But that was before the update. Now with the high demand bonus, if you are in a session with only 20 people, you get the full high demand bonus. So on top of the 100 grand, you will get an extra $50,000 on top of that. So after all the fees, that brings your total net gain up to 130,000, which is a pretty big increase. It doesn't sound like a lot at first, but knowing that you could sell about 4 of these in an hour, that does add up. So in order to only get top tier, you want to collect all the standard and mid tier vehicles. How do you do this? This will take some time, but after that, this becomes one of the best money making methods in the whole game, still in 2022, even coming up to 2023. So there are about 40 total spots in each vehicle warehouse. Again, it doesn't matter which one you have, they all hold the same amount of vehicles, and 32 unique vehicles to source. But only 20 of them are standard and mid-range vehicles, so what you want to do is source 10 to 11 mid and standard range vehicles each, so there will be about 10 or 11 mid to standard range cars that you want to get before getting into the top tier cars. But they all need to be unique and avoid repeats. So you need to pay attention to the license plate on these cars. So this is how this works out in the servers. So each car is classified with a license plate number. So those can be duplicates or repeats. But once you have one of each, they don't repeat anymore. So once you get one of each, they all stop and you only get the new vehicles. So if you do it perfectly, you will only get top range cars because that's the only ones you have left to get. So as you see in the video here, I have all the unique license plates for the standard and mid-range cars. And that's what you need for this to work. So they all need to be different on each car and have no duplicates. So if you do get a duplicate when sourcing all these vehicles, sell it. If you get a top range car, sell it too. And do this until you have all of the unique license plates. So let's say you have a T20 with the double license plate. So if you get that one again, you want to sell that and source another one with a license plate you don't have already. I'm using the T20 as an example, but that is a top range. So let's say the Mamba, which is a mid-range car. If you have a repeated Mamba, you want to sell that. The best way I found to do this is write down which ones you have already once you deliver each one to the warehouse. And you could pause the video here to see every car and every license plate you can get. So you only need one of each. So now you have 20 or 21 of these cars with all unique license plates, and they all should be standard or mid-range vehicles. And once you've done this, you will now start to source only top range cars. Another tip is that if you don't use a cargo bob, then you could keep all the classic range vehicles in your garage so you only source the fastest vehicles that's easier and faster to drive to your warehouse. That'll make it a little bit easier. So to summarize it, you want to get one of each unique license plate vehicles in your garage, sell each duplicate that shows up, and once you have about 10 or 11 unique plates for each standard and mid-range vehicle, you can start sourcing top range only. And it will stay like this forever until you sell one of your standard or mid-range cars. So once you do this, that's all you need to do forever. That makes this method super OP and really good, especially now with a high demand bonus, adding an extra $50,000 on top of what you get before. So now we move on to sourcing the vehicles. So I have some tips for you guys. So moving to sourcing the top range cars. So since we just went over how to only source top range cars, now we could get into the tips of sourcing these vehicles. So the first thing, always source in an invite only session. There is no reason to be sourcing in a public session. You can now do all of the businesses in invite only sessions. So doing this will make sure no one comes after you and you don't have any lag with the demon traffic that comes out every once in a while. So you do have a few different options. So for sourcing these, you do have a few different options. If you don't have a cargo bob, you could just collect it like normal and drive to your warehouse and not care about the damage. The most damage I've ever gotten from NPCs who chase you is only about 5k, which isn't a lot. But if you do have a cargo bob, this is what you're going to want to use for every sourcing mission you do. This makes it super easy leaving your CEO office, going to your location, and then going back because you can get straight into the cargo bob from your CEO office for only $200, which I still think is the best location to source from. Because remember, with these updated loading times, it only takes about 10 seconds to switch sessions. So just switch sessions every time you want to source a vehicle. You automatically spawn right back in your office, so that makes it super fast and easy. So using the cargo bob, once you get to the car, hook onto it and get some height because the car will weigh down the helicopter, so try not to move too much and gain a lot of height and then fly directly to your warehouse. Even with the chopper, even with some of the choppers that come after you in some missions, the cargo bob should be fine and the car won't get damaged. Some missions will have you have to get out of the cargo bob to do a race or shoot someone out of the car or something. There's not really too much you can do about those. You can manage to shoot them out without getting damage onto your car, but sometimes it just will happen. It's not that big of a deal. Maybe it'll be $200, that's nothing. There's also one where you get the cops onto you. This one is really easy to solve just by using the easy way out once you get inside to lose the cops. Or you could still call Lester to get the cops off you. I think it's one of the last businesses that you could still do that with. And use the cargo bob. Once you get to the warehouse, depending on the location, you could just drop it off while staying inside of the cargo bob. You don't have to get out or anything, just drop it straight off into the circle and you should respawn outside back inside of your cargo bob. Now once you have sourced a top range vehicle, it is now time to sell. So we are going to be selling by land for the first part. So there's 3 different selling options. One, the private for $40,000, showroom for $70,000, and specialist dealer for $100,000. I don't know why you would choose any other to sell, so always choose the specialist, obviously. And again, there is now a high demand bonus with these businesses, giving you an extra 5 times cash for each person to 20 players now. So that brings the total net gain for a top range vehicle to $130,000 per car. So before you would always sell in a solo session, now it's always best to sell in a public one, because that adds up super fast when selling these vehicles back to back. And if you do sell with friends, you could sell up to 4 at a time. That the high demand bonus will go up a lot if you do that. So that's about $400,000 you'll get about $600,000 with that high demand bonus. So always sell in a session with at least 20 players to get that high demand bonus. Before you do anything, before you even click on anything to sell, make sure to go to your pause menu, look outside, make sure there's no jets around or any oppressors flying around or anyone maybe in the block outside of your warehouse, just to be safe. And if there is, just change sessions. It's that easy, and it only takes 10 seconds now to change sessions. And for public sessions, I still wouldn't use a cargo bob for public sessions, because that just increases the chance of someone seeing you and being able to shoot you down with a one shot. So stick to the ground for this. Big tip is to use ghost organization. Off the radar won't work. So with any business, off the radar won't work. You have to use ghost organization to be off the radar. And that gives you 3 extra minutes, which for me is more than enough depending on where your warehouse is and how good of a driver you are. But after those 3 minutes are up and maybe you still haven't made it, you should be out of the city at least and almost to the buyer. So even if someone does see you in a jet or a presser, they won't have enough time to get to you. I mean, you should really have no problem. And if you don't want to use ghost organization, just make sure no one's around. And if you do see someone coming after you, maybe hit it then or change sessions. You could also do that if you don't want to spend the extra 15 grand, but you will be making that back anyways. And as you see in the gameplay here, no one's coming after me when I'm selling this. That's because I am in a public session. So doing it in a public session with at least 1 player makes it so that NPCs won't come after you. Unlike in a solo session where a bunch of enemies will come after you and you will have to take them out, and that wastes more time. So moving on to a solo session, selling in a solo session. So, which again isn't worth it anymore with the high demand bonus you get now, but if you are selling by ground in a solo session, there will be a wave of 4 enemy vehicles coming after you. So 4 waves of 2 vehicles, you have to take them all out, and they do shoot you very fast. So once you start selling, once you get a little bit outside of the warehouse zone down the block, pull off to the side and easy way out so they don't even get a chance to hit you. So easy way out once you pull off to the side and you see those red dots on the minimap. Once you take out the first wave, run a little up the road because they won't spawn if you just sit still. So run a little up the road or down the road, then they should spawn again for the second wave. And do that until they stop spawning, where you take out all 4 waves of the 2 vehicles. And then you could just drive straight there and while avoiding the traffic, deadly traffic. Or if you do have a cargo bob, which I do recommend for solo sessions, use that the same way as you did when sourcing. Just hook onto the car and gain some height. Maybe the size of the Maze Bank Tower would be good enough to get to 90% of the locations they have you delivered to. That way you won't have to stop and gain more height on the way there. Just gain all the height at the start and then go straight there. And that will prevent the NPCs from hitting you from the ground. And then there you go, you have sold the top range vehicle for $100,000 or now $150,000. And that is a big increase. It all adds up. Again, you can do stuff in the background too, run some businesses in the background of this, and even between the 20-minute cooldown timer, which there is a 20-minute cooldown timer, do some CEO work in the middle of that to get extra money, and maybe even if you use Ghost Organization, just do a quick mission and get that money back. So I would do some supply runs for some other businesses like the bunker, or if you just buy supplies for the AFK businesses and do this in the background, then you could do CEO work in between the 20-minute cooldown timer, and that really adds up to millions per hour with this method. This vehicle cargo warehouse is really underrated because a lot of people just do it by itself, which it's not meant to do by itself like many of the businesses in this game. You do not want to do anything by itself. You want to stack these on top of each other. So think of this not as $400,000 per hour, but $400,000 on top of everything else, which will be $2 million per hour you could get just by adding this on top of those other money-making methods you do every day. Also, going back to selling four, you could sell 4 at a time with a full CEO organization, which will get you a very nice high demand bonus, but that will also increase the cooldown timer too. So in my opinion, it doesn't really make a big difference if you do it solo or with a full organization. You will still have to wait the time. I think it triples when you do it with a full organization, so it really doesn't make that big of a difference. So now you know the ins and outs of the special vehicle work and why it's the most underrated business in GTA Online now. They even increased it. I've even seen some more people doing it more than before now after this update, because it is really good. It's really underrated. People don't know how good this is until they actually try it. And you know the best tips of how to complete the missions and get the most money possible after the newest update. This really is one of the most underrated businesses now, and even before, because it's one of the OG businesses, people just don't look at it anymore, but it still holds up. And that's why even before, they stopped giving us double money on it. Come on, Rockstar, give us double money on this. They don't do it anymore because it's so good. But if you enjoyed this video, this full guide breakdown 2023 of the special vehicle warehouse work, one of the most underrated businesses. If you got this far, that probably means you liked it. Leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more. I'll see you guys in whatever video I make next.